Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Good evening. Welcome to the Inside Scoop. I'm Jeff Barnett. Tonight we're going to be getting the Inside Scoop from two political warriors. The first is Bruce Shuttleworth. He's running for Congress in the 8th Congressional District. That's a district that's presently represented by Jim Moran. And there are, I think at last count, 10 Democrats competing for that nomination. The primary will be on June 10th. In the second half of the show, we're going to be talking with Cesar Del Aguila. Cesar was the chairman of the Fairfax County Democratic Committee, and many people give him extraordinary credit for the dominance of Democrats in Fairfax over the past few elections. So let's turn to my first guest, Bruce Shuttleworth. Bruce, welcome to the show.
Nice
Glad
to see you,
have
Jeff.
you here.
It's an honor to share time and space with you.
Well, thanks for the time. Now, you have a short video that really hits on some of your key subjects. So why don't we show that first and then come back and talk?
That sounds great. Thank you. Why am I running for Congress? It's simple. I want to be your progressive warrior in Congress. I will fight for social and economic justice, a sustainable economy where profit and jobs are important, clean air and water and energy security that actually makes us more secure, improved health care and a family doctor for all, national security that doesn't sacrifice our morals or lead us down a path of financial bankruptcy, and, critically, I will battle for reforming Congress, where compromising your integrity for personal gain isn't an option. Quite frankly, if Congress continues to serve the narrow, selfish interests of its members and their 1% backers over the interests of the American people, it doesn't look too good for our 200-plus year experiment in representative democracy. We just can't have congressmen who choose to represent themselves first. It's time we fight to save our country. Now is not the time to be cynical about how corrupt the system is and how nothing will change it. It isn't too late, but it certainly isn't too early. We can be the force that rights our ship and gets us back on course. I will join this battle, but I need your help. I can't do this alone. Nobody can. But I will fight hard, and we will never back down. I was raised by my parents with an ethos of service to community, to society, to nation. And great Americans of Virginia's 8th, it is time. Why am I running? It's simple. I want to be your progressive warrior for change in Congress.
Well, Bruce, you want to right the ship. I guess that's a Navy term. You're a graduate of the Naval Academy?
I am. I also was honored to represent the Naval Academy at West Point for 6 months, so I speak a little Army as well.
And then you also went to Harvard Business School. We got an MBA, right? And
I
then
did.
Boston Consulting Group and MicroStrategy.
That's correct.
And Blackboard, right?
Right, Blackboard educational software in the district.
And then Navy, you flew A6s, the Intruder?
I was an A4 Skyhawk flight instructor for a few years, which was a terrific duty, and then I served over Bosnia and Mogadishu when the Blackhawks went down, flying A6 Intruders off of USS America.
Fascinating. Well, righting the ship, and let's just talk about some of your key things. Social and economic justice. What do people need to know about your position on that?
Well, I think it's completely unsatisfactory that we have such massive income disparity in the United States. You'd expect it to be a bell curve, would you not? And to have the top 1% controlling 38% of wealth in America and the bottom 60% to have 3.8% is not the sign of a healthy economy, and something we should do so much better on.
Right. We've talked here in the past almost about an aristocracy arising in America with this kind of concentrated wealth. It's not that anybody begrudges the wealthy.
Right.
It's a concentration of wealth in a narrow bit, which historically has caused problems. And now we're at levels that we really haven't seen since really before the Great Depression, the Roaring '20 area.
I think that's exactly right.
So what are some of the things we can do about that?
Well, most assuredly, I think we should increase the minimum wage. Every study that is credible has pointed to the negative elasticity between increasing the minimum wage and decreasing poverty. Certainly we should start there. I'm not sure if $10.10 is enough, quite frankly. I think we should probably go north of there, perhaps $11, and let's learn by doing and see how we are at that point. I think that's the best start. I also think that we have, at the top end, the opportunity to have a progressive tax code that matches our progressive values. Certainly, it's not unreasonable to expect those that control such enormous wealth to give some back, to leave the ladder down for those that could still benefit from climbing up those few rungs that they need to.
And we've been there before. It's not as though this is anything really new. That's on the economic side of justice, but you put social and economic justice together. Are they really two parts of the same whole, or are there some certain things on the social justice side that's on your agenda?
Well, most assuredly, when I think of social justice, I want to make sure that we have complete equality in America. Gender equality, sexual preference equality, most assuredly racial equality. This is a constant struggle in America, and it shouldn't be. I think back from a personal experience to see just how superb women were in some unconventional pursuits. When I was a flight instructor, actually before that, one of my flight instructors was a fantastic fighter pilot and went on to fly the Space Shuttle Challenger not once, but twice. And her name was Sue. And there's absolutely nothing that women can't do in any area of the world. Certainly, we know this. From the perspective of sexual preference, it's just shocking that after the demise of the dishonest disgrace that was Don't Ask, Don't Tell, that transgendered officers and enlisted cannot serve right now. It's just absolutely unsatisfactory. I have a classmate from the Naval Academy that friended me on Facebook a couple years ago, and I didn't recognize her. She said she was a classmate of mine from the Naval Academy, and I just couldn't quite put the face to my memory, and it was bugging me. So a couple of days later, I friended her, and then, oh, I see.
And what is she doing now?
Now she's a lawyer in Ohio. Stayed with me for a few days and did a terrific talk about equality over Veterans Day. And she had one of the more funny Facebook quotes when she said, to her great credit, that she was going to be going to our 25th Naval Academy reunion. And she said, do you think people will say that I've changed?
You've got a whole raft of issues that we really should cover. We've got a few minutes before the first break, so let's get into infrastructure. You've talked about sustainable energy, food, water, transportation, housing. So let's just start off with sustainable energy.
Absolutely. So I think this is the #1 national security threat in America and the world, and we need to get on it. If our country can have the determination and grit to put man on the moon in the 1960s, there's no way that we can't chart a course to a sustainable energy future in America. The most powerful sources of energy in the world, the sun, most clearly, wind. There's plenty of power. It's free, and we can chart that course and get this done. There's a great study that came out from a Stanford professor, Mark Jacobson, for the Solutions Project, talking about how we can be 100% wind, water, and solar by 2050. Would it be hard? Absolutely. But ultimately, if you take into account all the externalities that we have with fossil fuels, to say nothing about climate instability and the threat to civilization when it comes to climate change, this is something we have to get on. I'm in the math, facts, and science department of the wing of the Democratic Party, and there's no doubt that climate change is man-made. It's a huge threat. It introduces huge risks, and we need to get on it.
Is there a first step that you would like to take?
I would like to work this in the right direction very aggressively. I want to be the most passionate voice in Congress when it comes to this. We have in Virginia the opportunity to get 60% of our energy needs from offshore wind. It's a terrific resource. 10% would probably come from onshore wind, and probably about 35% from solar power, with some residual from tidal and hydroelectric. It's incredibly doable. With the technology we have right now, what it's going to take is the political and social will to get it done.
Well, the institutions that you're going to buck up against are going to be pretty powerful.
They will be.
It's not just like the coal industry, for example, but it's also the railroad industry that works with the coal industry. It's also labor that has jobs in the railroad industry and the coal industry. I mean, there is that will be a massive disruption.
Well, let's talk jobs, Jeff. So my analysis in studying the Stanford project and some others shows that if we can embark on this sustainable energy course aggressively, we'll create 100,000 40-year jobs for the construction of this infrastructure and 80,000 40-year jobs going forward. These are the kind of jobs people want to have. These are the kind of jobs that don't harm people's lives by creating pollution and harming our planet.
You know, your concept of 40-year jobs, that's something that we don't hear much at all anymore.
No, we don't.
Jobs go obsolete very quickly, and that's why people are so uncertain about the future. So if you're talking about a 40-year job, that's something that a person, a family, can plan against. And that should be attractive on many, many levels. We have just a couple more minutes. Food. You know, that was also one of the things off your website. Why don't you talk about sustainable food?
Sure. I think there's great unknowns around the GMO foods that we have out there. I think we absolutely should label them. At this point, it's so pervasive that it's hard to eat in America without introducing yourself to this risk. There's so much we don't know. Elizabeth Kucinich has a terrific movie that she helped produce called GMO OMG that I hope a lot of people will watch. You know, people can make their own decisions about what they want to eat, and they certainly do so. But most assuredly, we should not have industry dictate, you know, what is on the label when people should have every right to know what they are eating. And I think Europe is more advanced than we are on this topic.
Yeah, how do we get there? I mean, how do we get into this situation to begin with, where industry is dictating?
I think you could follow the money on this, and certainly there is a lot of money at play when it comes to the profits that some of the larger companies have on this. Certainly it's in their best interest to try to dominate, to try to have monopoly power. The small farmer is not a big fan of this, and there's some big bullies out there. And I'm not begrudging corporate America their right to try to earn a fair profit, but most assuredly they shouldn't be putting society at risk with this. There's too many unknowns from my perspective. We need to go more slowly, we need to be more cautious with this, and we need to decide on the side of the small guy and look out for him. And that's the kind of congressman that I want to be.
You know, another one of your areas is reforming Congress, and that was on your that was on the video. We'll talk about that in the next part of the show. We're talking with Bruce Shuttleworth. He's running for U.S. Congress, a resident of Arlington, wife, 2 twin boys that he chases around. We'll be right back.
Art, a universal language, an expression of culture, of self, and now, thanks to Empowered Women International, a way for emerging and established immigrant and refugee artists and artisans to find hope to earn a living while enriching the lives of all of us. Empowered Women International, making a better America every day. For more information on Empowered Women International's educational programs, or to make a tax-free donation, contact C. Fripp at AOL.com.
Here, kitty, kitty. Here, kitty, kitty, kitty. Here, kitty, kitty.
You'd think it would be easy to tell which kids have trouble with their eyesight. But that's not always the case. Even though 1 in 4 children may have a vision problem, eye doctors tell us the symptoms aren't always so obvious. We do know that 80% of all childhood learning is visual. And without good vision, kids can have trouble learning to read and may fall behind in school. For clues on how to spot the real-life signs of childhood vision problems and what parents can do, visit checkyearly.com. A public service message from the Vision Council of America and Reading is Fundamental.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back. I'm Jeff Barnett. We're getting the inside scoop from Bruce Shuttleworth, who's running for the United States Congress in the 8th District. That's the district from which Jim Moran is retiring. Again, the Democratic primary will be on the 10th of June. In fact, there is a forum upcoming on April 12th at Mount Vernon High School between 4 and 6 p.m., where all of the candidates for the nomination will be there to answer questions. Shuttle, just before we broke, we were talking about Congress. Of course, the big issue there is Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. What's your take on it?
So I think ACA is a step in the right direction, but for me, make no mistake, the final destination needs to be universal health care, and I think the best way of doing that is an improved Medicare for all. If I could tell you a quick story.
So you go for a single payer?
Absolutely.
Okay.
A quick story on this is a 9/11 story. My mother, I'll back up a little bit. I went to work on 9/11 of 2002, not knowing what to expect, a little bit concerned, and I got a call from my father telling me that my mother was under attack and that she was diagnosed with lung cancer and probably had only 6 months to live. So she says to me, Bruce, I'm never been more healthy than I am right now. I'm going to take this vacation with your father to Sicily. And I was in that somewhat naive mode of, no, don't do that. Stay here and we're going to save you. We're going to do everything possible, experimental medicine, you name it. But she said, no, I'm going to go to Sicily. And so she goes there, and she's thinking she's going to have the worst day of her life because she's going to need to have a thoracentesis done there. And I hope you don't know what that is. It's where they have to insert a needle into your pleural sac to withdraw pleural fluid, which is a sign of having a diseased lung. So she goes there, and I helped her craft a one-pager, and they looked at this, and they said, we can do this. And 5 minutes... In Sicily. And 5 minutes later, they didn't ask for any social security number, obviously. They didn't really even ask her name. They just looked her in the eyes and said, what ails you? How can we help you? So 5 minutes later, she's with the doctor. And 5 minutes after that, she's in a surgical room. And then they're withdrawing the pleural fluid. And 10 minutes later, they say, you're free to go. And my mom, 68 years of being conditioned by the administrative bureaucracy that is the United States healthcare, kind of couldn't believe it. And she's like, well, who do I pay? I said, well, it's universal health care here in Sicily and in Italy. You don't have to pay anybody. She couldn't quite take that. And so she goes, but you don't understand, I'm not Italian. I'm not Sicilian. They go, man, we know you're not Sicilian. And you're still free to go. We had this profound discussion about this before she died. Right. She actually preferred the treatment she got in Palermo to the treatment she had at the marble-floored grand piano in the lobby, Johns Hopkins. When my father was diagnosed with lung cancer as well, a year after my mother died, he voted with his feet and went to a community hospital in Florida instead because he just wanted the simple blocking and tackling. Quite frankly, I think he would have preferred to go to Sicily as well, where the high morale, the lack of administration, people doing what they wanted to do. And I think that is the type of movement we need to have in America. Doctors want to help people. They don't want to have to deal with this bureaucracy. I think right now we're in this triangular treatment trap where we have fee-for-service doctors that are incented to some degree to overtreat, and that's dangerous. And then on the other end, we have the insurance companies that are incented to some degree to undertreat, and that's just pathetic. And then at the top, we have the hospital administrators who, quite frankly, are just making up robber baron-esque prices, and it's unfair. Obamacare asked a good question, that is, who pays? But the question that hasn't been asked is, why are we paying so much? And why are we getting such bad outcomes for the amount of money that we're paying? We can do so much better in America on prevention, on detection, on treatment. And someday, if we can invest the right amount of money, if we can get the right kind of intelligence, we can incent the right kind of people to start going into epidemiology and healthcare instead of perhaps Goldman Sachs, no offense to Goldman Sachs, we can have a cure. And whether that day is close in or far out is going to be up to us.
And another thing, I'm sure that hospital in Palermo was paying far less for its drugs
Absolutely.
than we have to pay here. And if there is a problem, they're going to pay far less for the lawyers that we pay here. So between
Because
the
it's-
hospital administrators, the attorneys, big pharma, and the insurance companies, they're taking the cream off the top, and we've almost become to accept it, and it's killing. It's not only killing people; it's killing the economy.
That's absolutely right. Corporations don't want to have to deal with this.
We're heading towards 20% of GDP
Right.
for healthcare, and our economic competitors are paying 8 to 11%. The Germans, the Japanese, the English, the French, the Italians.
Well, if you look at Medicare, their overhead is about 1%.
Right.
If you look at the range of overhead for private medical care, it ranges from 10% on high volume practices to 30% for individuals. If you take that slice out, there's nothing we can't do. Think about the overinvestment we could then do in the National Cancer Institute that's only getting $5 billion. $5 billion. Our national defense and black budget and homeland defense gets 150 times that, but you're thousands of times more likely to die of cancer than you are from terrorism. And the United States of America is not going to be invaded. It's not. There's enough guns in Montana to deal with that. And no one wants to make sure that we have a strong enough military than myself. I owe my very life to the manpower and training and material that I had when I was flying
As do
off
I.
the pointy end of the ship, and thank you for your service. But do we need to have a military that is more than 10 times or more than the next 10 countries rolled up into one, many of which are our allies?
Let's stay on the military for a second. Let's talk about our veterans.
Absolutely.
You've made that a hallmark of your campaign. So tell us what is your agenda, when you get to Congress for Veterans Affairs.
I will be the most passionate voice in Congress when it comes to veteran care. If you fought for us over there, I'll fight for you over here. If you got injured over there, you're going to get treated over here. And if there's not enough capacity in a VA center to heal you or to treat you, then you should be able to go to any hospital, anywhere, and get treated. This is very personal to me. We should just build back at Medicare rates and get our soldiers treated. And let's make no mistake about it, mental health care is health care. And PTSD is something that if we don't get on it now, it's incredibly dangerous. It is contagious. There's a great book that was written by David Finkel called Thank You for Your Service. It's a tough but necessary read. And it talks about how we can have returning service people coming with PTSD and TBI, and they can, quite frankly, then give that to their spouse. And the spouse can get that, and then their children can get that. And this could be a generations-long problem if we don't treat them properly, and we need to. We have to get on this. It's a national urgency.
Of course, one of the reasons that we don't go into wars in the first place is because these are inevitable consequences.
Inevitable.
And the best we can do is treat them and mitigate them, but eradicate it is I don't think it's on the agenda.
And I would argue that it shouldn't really be called post-traumatic stress disorder. This is a natural function of
Right.
being in such a high stress, your life is on the line environment for as long as they are serving our country. And another horrible outcome here is that we have our service people coming back and they're somewhat changed sometimes. And sometimes their behavior has changed. And the military too often is giving them bad conduct discharges, which then means they can't be a beneficiary of VA care or the GI Bill. And so now what are they supposed to do? This is somebody that's not the same person as when they left. And it's because they were serving the United States of America. We can do so much better on this, and we have to.
And what you're saying is that as a guy who's worn a uniform, that you can speak the language, you can understand the problems, the issues. You can understand if if the vet is asking for too much, or if the government is giving too little. You can understand from both sides.
Right. I'm on the board of directors of Give an Hour, which is a fantastic nonprofit that's provided 100,000 therapeutic hours to our returning service people. And without charities like this, we'd be in even worse straits. The government needs to make sure that they are planning on this and that they know that probably 30% will get PTSD. And if you layer in TBI on top of that, it's incredibly damaging. And this is the month of military carers. One of my advisors is Jess Klein, who is the wife of a friend of mine who unfortunately stepped on an IED. She had a great interview on national news just last week. And she's a an Elizabeth Dole Fellow. And we need to also take into account how difficult it is to care for our returning servicemen and women. And we need to get on this. We need to treat them more fairly and make sure that they have the care that they need.
Along with veterans, lots of federal employees live in the 8th Congressional District, and you have also signaled that out as an area of emphasis for you as a congressman. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. So it is distressing to me to see our federal workers not be treated with the same kind of honor that, say, the military is. It's just completely unsatisfactory. These folks are on the front lines of the American way. These are the folks that answered JFK's call. And to treat them with anything other than great admiration for the great work that they're doing to protect our commons, they're absolutely critical to the American way. And to cut off our nose to spite our face and to try to balance the budget on the backs of our federal workers, no, not on my watch. And Jim Rand has done a fantastic job at supporting our federal workers over the years, and he gets a lot of credit for that.
That's marvelous. Well, we've got just a couple of more minutes. I tell you what, why don't I just turn that over to you? Why don't you go ahead and talk with people, and just give them a minute as to why they should be voting for you for the Congress in the Democratic primary on June 10th.
Oh, thank you. I was endorsed by Dennis Kucinich, and I was very delighted to have been done so. I think he saw in me the leadership and trust and character that is so important to our United States Congress. To me, I think the United States Congress is the most important institution in the world, the most important arm of the most important country, and to have it at a 10% approval rating right now is richly earned, and it needs to be fought so that we get it back to where it needs to be. And we need to make sure that we're electing congressmen and congresswomen of the highest integrity and the highest trust that will do things that are right because they're right, even if it hurts them in the process. I will be that congressman. I'm committed to that. I've always chosen the harder right, and I'll continue to do so. I will not be beholden to the big money interests. I'll do what's right for the American people. So help me God.
Well, Bruce, thank you very much. Shuttle, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Jeff.
Again, the Democratic primary is on the 10th of June, and there is a forum on the 12th of April. It'll be at Mount Vernon High School. All, 10 candidates will be there. And Bruce, it's just been a joy talking with you, and the best of luck in your campaign, and thank you for standing up.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Really appreciate the interview.
Best of luck.
Thank you.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. Well, it's a matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke before you give it a try.
Only you.
Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about ripped off money. Nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Why don't you just wash your car at home? When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals in the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water. At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site. That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff. You know what the best part is?
What?
More time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
Maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent!
Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. dedicated men and women who put their country first.
This is the Inside Scoop. I'm Jeff Barnett. Welcome back to the show. I'm here with Cesar Del Aguila, who is a former chairman of the Fairfax County Democratic Committee.
Go Dems!
Many people give Cesar great credit for expanding the Democratic base and for helping an extraordinary number of Democrats get elected
statewide
within Fairfax County.
Statewide sweep.
Which is not only the statewide sweep, but really one of the nexi of that sweep was here in Fairfax.
Yes.
Cesar, when you talk with both elected officials and with voters, what is the big issue that's on their mind? What comes out the most?
Pretty much people talk about transportation, they talk about education, and to a lot of extent the healthcare costs at the federal level. At the local levels, again, it's all metro, and obviously education, schools.
And is that, you live in Herndon.
I'm in Herndon.
And so the Vienna-Herndon area, we have some upcoming local elections there.
We do. Town elections in Herndon, Vienna, and all the towns.
And what do those elections, what are they going to revolve around?
So I can speak more to the Herndon because I'm kind of involved in living there, but it's about metro, it's about downtown development, and really where to invest the town dollars that we get from the state and the county. So from that perspective, it's again, transportation, education, investing in the infrastructure. And I think that's what most voters are kind of like gearing towards these days.
And is there a schism in terms of options as to where those dollars will be invested?
Yeah, I mean, you always have opposing views on, even at the local level. But at the local level, they tend to hit home a lot closer. Right. Example, there's a candidate that I'm supporting, Mayor Merkel, versus another opponent. They have completely different views on where the town should go in terms of investing, downtown development, preparing for metro. So people really need to start looking at the different issues, and I'll certainly help with that.
So let me just kind of go down the weeds here. Let's say you were talking to somebody about Lisa Merkel, who's running for mayor, and you said you should vote for Lisa because. I mean, what would you say?
She supported finance disclosure. She supported the metro rezoning, the downtown development of the Herndon historic downtown, and really investing in the infrastructure for the overall comprehensive plan. So she has a vision to get the town a little bit more forward, as opposed to trying to figure out how to cut things to take us back to a zero tax base. I think there's a difference in a lot of folks' mind.
And in the money that we're talking about here, I mean, when you're talking about this money that's going to be invested, how much are we talking about?
Well, remember, it's an investment over time. A lot of people tend to have a very short-term view of things. Cut my taxes here today, as opposed to some people want to take a longer view. If I invest $1 in, let's say, a downtown development effort, whether it be an art space or maybe changing zoning, what does that do for the community and the people in that community 5, 10, 20 years from now? So I always like to say, though we may only live 100 years, we should be planning for 1,000 years. So that's, I think, the long-term strategic view is what I like to see in my politicians and candidates.
And those elections that are upcoming, when are they?
May 6th.
Oh.
May 6th. Yeah, it's coming up here. We're less than a month away, so be knocking on doors. You know what that's like, right, Jeff?
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, knocking on doors. Open seat.
Yes.
The 10th Congressional District.
The 10th.
Frank Wolf has represented that district.
He had a run. I won't say he had a good run. He had a run.
32 years.
Right. He ran on term limits, by the way. Well, you know that. Who am I talking to?
How do you see that? Now, that district, which runs, we've had some people here. In fact, in 2 weeks, we're having Delegate Bob Marshall is going to be on the show. Yeah. And he is running for the Republican primary for that. But that district runs from McLean all the way to the West Virginia border. Yeah. How do you, and I'm sorry, also that district was won by Ken Cuccinelli against McAuliffe, and it was won by Romney over President Obama. In both cases by 1 percentage point. It was close, but still it was won by Republicans. So how do you see that shaking out between, what's the dynamics that are going on now?
Well, first, that's going to be a tough race. It's doable because I think
a tough race for a Democrat.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, who am I talking to? Right? I mean, it's just the redistricting made it tougher, right? Because I think Herndon got moved and shifted a little bit. But I think this time, if I can dare say, the DCCC is actually serious about the race. And John Faust, who is the Democratic unopposed candidate, is probably going to get a lot more support than I think previous candidates have had. And you can speak better to the type of support that is needed. That district is going to take a lot of effort and energy and people mobilizing to get the word out. John's a good candidate. He's a great candidate for that district. I think his demeanor, his way of approaching things, he's probably the best fit right now for that district.
You're talking about getting out the vote. You are one of the leaders in grassroots politicking. And I say one, I mean, not to say that you're the only, but...
No, there's a lot better people than me.
How has that changed? How has grassroots politics changed in Fairfax over, and pick a time period, last 3 or 4 years?
I think certainly there's two ways to approach it, right? We talked about a little bit of short-term, long-term. But then there's also who you target and on what basis. So I always pull people back to the issues. You got to find out the why. Why does an individual want to take their time, their energy, their resources, their money to go promote an issue or support an issue at the polls? And what we have found, me personally, is the Northern Virginia region has become very diverse over the last 10, 20 years. The message is very different than it was 10, 15 years ago. That message needs to reach different groups of people that have their own community, their own jargon, terminology. And what I found with and I'm talking about the ethnic community, the minority community, that even, I'll take the Latinos, we have a very unique community, whether it be people from Mexico, Cuba, Puerto Rico, South America. We need to find a better way to consistently sustain outreach as Democrats to those communities. And you have to start and target the elders of that community. And you do it with persuading some of the young folks to convince their parents or grandparents, hey, I'm interested in this. Because no offense to you or I, we can't go into the communities that we are not a part of 2, 4, 6 weeks before an election and try to persuade someone to come out and vote for us. Do you know what I mean? So that effort by the grassroots organizations needs to happen month after month, quarter after quarter, year after year, beyond the campaigns. Campaigns, typically they parachute field organizers and then they're gone the day after the election. My point has been we need to look at this completely differently and sustain that outreach effort beyond every election, which is not something electeds or campaign managers want to talk about because you're diverting resources from the here and now. So that's the balance between the grassroots and the folks running.
That's the schism between campaigns and parties and committees.
That's right.
Campaigns are very tactical. They've got a 4-month, 6-month window. And as far as building up a message over time,
right,
and building those links over time, that is not something that they do unless they are an elected already,
right,
or have run previous, or somehow already have that.
Well, even electeds, and with all due respect to every elected official in Fairfax County, it's about the next election once they get into campaign mode. And it's very difficult because they have a job to do, they have things to address. That's why it falls upon the grassroots folks, the activists, the committees, to really put in place that sustainable model.
And what is the role of message in that? And I preface this by saying, oftentimes when I have seen outreach to the minority community, it has been a negative message.
Yeah.
Vote for us because the other guy is gonna be bad.
Right.
It hasn't been a proactive or positive message that is based on that community.
Right.
Or maybe it has been, I just haven't seen a lot of it.
Yeah.
Or do you, I don't know if you agree.
Well, I would say yes, on the surface. Again, it takes time to invest in crafting a message for that community. More importantly, a message in their language. That's how you reach the elders. That's how you get credibility. And quite frankly, whether you're speaking with an individual in their language, if you're showing the effort, if you're showing that you respect their custom, their language, that goes a long way. It's a meaningful act for some of these folks. And that's what we have to do. Again, that requires time and effort and energy. When I was chair, we produced videos and literature in 22 languages.
22?
22 languages. That's a proud moment. Absolutely. 22 outreach languages. They're on YouTube, and we got literature all over the place.
I mean, I can't even name 22 languages.
Well, that's the thing. You get volunteers to basically be the emissaries. And that's the kind of thing we need to invest in and keep going. Again, I know campaigns don't have that time or resources.
But you have been doing that.
We have been.
And what's the next step? I mean, you're doing that now. Is it more of the same, or is it better?
No, let me tell you, the electoral market, the voter, changes year over year. Your outreach tactics, strategies, and supporting items need to also change. If you're doing the same thing you were doing 5 years ago, you're done. 10 years ago, the concept of a social channel wasn't heard of. So, especially today, and I'm a business guy, and if you're not changing your strategies and tactics on a quarterly, yearly basis, you are losing the war. Because that's how fast things are changing just with people involved. People are used to getting their information differently today than they were 5 years ago. And they're more selective about how they get their information. So in order to, you won't ever replace someone at the door knocking, asking for a person's support. But supporting that's different.
We're going to pick up on all of that when we come back from our break. I'm Jeff Barnett. You're watching The Inside Scoop. I'm here with Cesar Del Aguila, former chairman of the Democratic Committee of Fairfax County. We'll be back in just 2 minutes.
Saving for retirement might be easy for some folk, but for others, it might take a little more work. And for those who haven't started, there are still things you can do to catch up.
Oh, that is good news.
Like getting out from underneath past debt. And don't get wrapped up with high-interest credit cards.
Get you some eyes.
Be diversified with your investments. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Your financial goals are not out of reach. The choice is clear. For a happy ending, choose to save.
Everyone with alcohol and drug addiction is in the same boat. With treatment, you can find solid ground. For drug and alcohol information and treatment referral for you or someone you know, call 1-800-662-HELP.
Dude, are you sure you want this tattoo? Because just do it.
Some mistakes in life are permanent. Like hearing loss. To learn how to protect your hearing, visit asha.org.
You've probably heard about heart disease, but did you know that it's the #1 killer of women nationwide? Heart disease claims more lives each year than breast cancer, lung cancer, or strokes combined. But there are steps you can take to protect yourself against it. For more information on how you can prevent heart disease, contact your local American Heart Association or visit their website at www.americanheart.org.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I'm Jeff Barnett, and we're getting the Inside Scoop from Cesar Del Aguila, former chairman of the Fairfax County Democratic Committee. In the first part of the show, we really talked about local levels and grassroots. Cesar, I'd like to change the topic a little bit now.
Sure.
Two elections that are just starting to get on people's radar. Jerry Connolly is running for re-election in
my
the
congressman.
11th
That's right.
Congressional
That's
District.
right.
Yeah. And Mark Warner is running for re-election for the Senate race.
Yep.
I'm not sure that Jerry has a Republican opponent, does he?
I believe so. I had heard things, but I just want to go back to say that it's going to be about turnout in all of these races. And I hear some of my Democratic friends, and I love them all, well, Jerry's a shoo-in, Jerry's this. Let me tell you, that is the quickest way to lose an election. People need to take this serious, and Jerry Connolly, Congressman Connolly, will tell everyone nothing is ever in the bag. So we got to make sure we're doing what we can for Jerry Connolly, making calls, donating our time, our money, because that is the quickest way. There's too many Democrats out there saying, oh, he's going to win, he's going to win. I don't like hearing people say that.
What do you think Jerry's key themes will be? What do you think are going to be the big issues in the 11th? The same as what you talked about before?
Yeah, and I won't speak for Jerry. I'm not authorized to speak for Congressman Connolly, but I can just tell you it's the district that I live in, and those are the issues that we talked about before. Transportation, healthcare, and certainly education. Yeah, education.
Yeah. Mark Warner.
My guy, good guy.
That's going to be a tougher race, and people, I think myself included, kind of thought that he has a clear shot, but Ed Gillespie may pose a threat.
This is going to be, let me tell you, there's a reason why Virginia is known as the battleground state, because from top to bottom, and even the local elections, it's always a battle. And that Senate seat, it's up for grabs in the Republicans' mind. So we're going to have to work real hard for Senator Warner there to make sure he gets back to the Senate.
We've always talked about Virginia not just being a battleground state, another way to say there's a purple state. Mm-hmm. But when I look at these maps, I guess if you're way far away, it looks purple. But when you get up close, it's either bright blue
Absolutely.
Or it's bright red.
Absolutely.
There's not a lot of overlap even within the counties, within the districts.
That's a great observation, Jeff. And I tell you, it's never more clear than on election night. Because those counties start reporting in, it's red, it's red, it's red, and it's a deep red. It's not until you get to the northern part of the state where some of the bluer, denser counties start to report in. And I tell you, we go through this every election. We're sweating it. We're sweating it. I hope to God Fairfax or Arlington or Loudoun is kicking in some votes. And that's how it is. To your point, it's not like you have a lot of purple districts out there. They're either red or they're blue at the county level.
Yeah. Initial newspaper reports, anyway, say that Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, will be a major theme on the Republican side.
Sure.
Do you think that will be true, and how do you think that will?
Well, it absolutely will be.
Fairfax.
And absolutely will be. But my question for my candidates that I'm supporting would be to try to ask a Republican what their answer is, beyond repeal and replace. I mean, I think we're beyond that. It's passed, Supreme Court supported it, now it's the implementation phase. Now granted, like any big project, you've worked on some big programs, things happen, but you fix it. You don't abandon the project, you tweak it and make it better. You fix process and refine procedures. And that's where I think we are. And most people are now starting to enroll, and they're starting to see the benefit of actually having coverage, being able to keep their children on their plans, not being denied for pre-existing condition. So I think it's going to be a positive for the Democrats. I think I would just ask Republicans what their approach would be. what their solution is to these hundreds of thousands of people in our state that still do not have affordable health care.
When you ask Republicans, do you get an answer at all?
So I make it a point to always talk to my Republican friends. I just had lunch with a very hardcore Republican friend on Friday, and his response was, we just need to do away with it. And so I asked, I'll call him B, well, what's your answer? He's like, well, people just have to find their own health care. Like, well, if you have a pre-existing condition, and let's say you're 60, 65, you're not going to be able to get the services. And is that the kind of country we want to live in? Is that the kind of society we want? Oh, you're making it more than it is. Well, some people just don't want to talk about the issue. The issue is, what kind of society, culture do we want? Where you and I, maybe we pay an extra few dollars to ensure children or people with pre-existing conditions get affordable health care.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not an extra few dollars. This is going to be expensive.
Oh, sure.
The thing but the individual mandate that comes in, that is a major sticking point, because I think Americans in general, and Southerners in particular, don't like to be told what to do.
Well, I don't either. I mean, the sign says 55. I want to drive 57, Jeff. But we live in a society that's civilized. So we have rules, we have laws, and yes, in order to have all that nice stuff, we pay taxes. And I think for me personally, I have a sister affected by MS. Her medication is $1,200 a quarter. It's a lot of money for a teacher.
Right. And in today's world, where we're changing our jobs rapidly.
That's right.
And it's not that people are changing, the job market is changing, jobs are going away.
Right.
The concept of going down and working for the factory for 40 years and having your bass boat and making a career out of it and getting a gold watch at the end, I mean, those days are just gone. And we are going to be changing, but if you have a pre-existing condition,
that's right.
Either that inhibits whoever is going to hire you, or you're not going to be covered for that condition when all of a sudden that job that you had
is a
that
different
you thought
insurance.
was
Right.
a few years ago I went to the Kennedy Center, and in the Hall of Nations they have all the donors that originally donated to that. And so it's like, I think it's like 45 years ago when it was built and those names were put up. A third of those companies no longer exist.
Oh, sure.
They're
That's
gone.
Right. That's right.
And that's just how the world is now.
Absolutely. Excellent point, Jeff. Because if you think about our society today, we constantly have to re-engineer ourselves, our organizations, our companies, to keep pace. I mean, you and I aren't watching the game tonight on a Zenith or RCA TV.
Speaking of the game tonight, Kentucky versus UConn. You got a
well. I got more friends on the Kentucky side, so I'm gonna root for Kentucky there. Sorry.
Terry McAuliffe will probably be watching that game.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Terry's been down in Richmond since January.
Yep.
What's your feel? What's going on?
Well, I think first of all, Terry, proud member of the district I'm in, the Drainesville district, and the county. So he's my guy. I respect him a lot, and I think he's going to be a great governor. Obviously, when you step into that role, there's an onboarding time and a phase where you get accustomed. Terry's hitting the ground running as all of us expected. I think he's going to do great. This Medicare or the
Medicaid
expansion is going to be an issue. I think he'll deal with it, and I think Virginia will be happy with what he comes up with.
Yeah, so far I think the Senate has tried to compromise and come up with something, and they've gotten some Republican votes in the Senate for it. But the House is just, the House of Delegates is just hardwired. No.
Well, I think there's going to be some workarounds there. I think there's going to be more reaching across the aisle there. If I know Terry, I'd say if he talks to those folks, I think he can bring them on board. I mean, that's my hope. That's my vision. I mean, he understands the issues and he can boil it down and explain it to people.
Some of the one of the issues that always comes up in Virginia, gun control. Do you hear that from many people in Fairfax County? Is this a hot issue for people here?
No, and quite frankly, I don't know that we Democrats make that an issue. We're not against taking away anyone's guns. We never have been. I know both sides have crazy people that say crazy things, and the Democrats certainly have their share, but I mean, most of the people that I know either have guns or are okay with neighbors having guns. I don't think anyone's against that. I think when you start talking about, do you want unlimited purchasing of ammunition and assault weapons, then maybe we ought to have that discussion, because we are here in Northern Virginia, we're in a more dense location as opposed to maybe Page County or out west, where it's a little different. I'd have some. I mean, there was a gun store that opened up in Herndon, and some people were getting a little bit weirded out about that. But I mean, I don't have any problem with anyone. It's their right.
It's also a right to vote.
Yeah.
Voting rights does seem to be a prickly issue and there's strange bedfellows there.
Yeah.
People that should be just adamant that everybody should be able to vote really seem to be on the other side.
Yep.
Where do you see that? Where's that going? Where's that coming from?
Well, I think I filed litigation against the state with some of these voting issues that we had. And quite frankly, I think some people just don't want to address the problem. To acknowledge there's a problem somehow speaks ill of them or their abilities. And I don't look at it that way. I look at it, if any one person has an issue to vote that should be able to vote, then we need to fix the process. Whether it's military folks from overseas, they submit their absentee ballot and it gets tossed out because there isn't a P.O. box or something. Whether it's someone that registered to vote but moved and they're at the wrong precinct. Some people don't want to tell them that they can go back to their home precinct and vote. So there's process, there's a lot of holes in it. I was part of a task force that reviewed the election. I think a lot of the recommendations, if put in place, will fix a lot of the issues.
Cesar, it has been a pleasure to talk
always.
to you, man. This conversation went just at the speed of heat. I hope you can come on again on the show and just kind of talk about just how fascinating politics are here in Northern Virginia, because really, we're almost like Peoria goes. As right. Northern Virginia goes, so goes Virginia.
Amen.
And these days, so goes the nation.
That's right. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Pleasure. Thank you.